It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our daily gun show. We come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for about an hour or however long we can go. So we go live at midnight, and we do this so that we can own the night. We want to do something like an Art Bell show, eventually just going live for long format all night long, talking about Second Amendment and then guns, I guess, also. But we've been sharing the gun community since 2005 daily. Full-time since 2006, just covering gun stuff, going to gun shows and across the country and going to gun shops and museums. On Mondays, our goal with the show is to motivate Second Amendment activists, give people some inspiration and some awareness, some behind the scenes. And when I can, I bring on activists to interview. I use the style of James Kalita, where I'll attempt to just shut up and let the guest talk about three things: who they are quickly, because hopefully you know who they are. And usually I talk to people after they've been on Riding Shotgun with Charlie, which will give you a good introduction to the person and the work that they've done. But then why they do it and how they're doing it. And tonight we've got a full-time Second Amendment activist, somebody that I'm been looking forward to chatting with for a while. And after listening to the interview with Riding Shotgun with Charlie, even more so. But mainly one of the reasons is because you've got more access to Melius than anybody I've known so far, and you might be the only other person I know that likes Red Dawn as much as I do. So we'll chat a little bit here.
I don't just like Red Dawn. I think Red Dawn was was truly a movie that set my life on a particular path. I mean, it was truly. I don't even call it a movie anymore. I call it a documentary. But I'm glad to see I found a fellow Red Dawn friend. I like the intro to your show. That's awesome.
Right on. Yeah, and I agree. It is, and the more interviews I listen to of people that have accomplished great things, they'll also mention that Red Dawn inspired at a time when, well, the Cold War was kind of overwhelming. And it wasn't sure how it was going to end. And Red Dawn gave us some steel, right? Some guide, not so much specific guidance, but just a pop culture reference that we could all use and stand behind. And it was just the right thing at the right time for a lot of us. But without getting into Red Dawn too much, we'll end up getting into Red Dawn. You're on the road right now, and you're about to head past Red Dawn. So we'll end up talking about Red Dawn here. But we're talking to Michael Schwartz. You do a couple of different things. You got to, like I mentioned, you're a full-time Second Amendment activist. You host the Gun Owners Radio Show. You've got the San Diego County Gun Owners Organization. You've hosted the Gun Prom. You've franchised the concept of building a two-way organization. There's other places in California that have those, but you're probably better at giving an elevator speech than I am trying to describe your accomplishments. So if you would, I'm going to, again, try to just emulate James Kalita here, give you as much time as you'd like to chat about who you are quickly, and then, because I hopefully, again, people know who you are, but then let's talk about why you do what you do. Because again, you've accomplished a lot of stuff and had a great time to be doing it. So anyway, thanks again for joining us, especially since you're on the road. And take it away.
Absolutely. Pleasure is all mine. Truly an honor to be on this show. I really, really appreciate you reaching out. It's 7 years ago, we started San Diego County Gun Owners, and that was after about 10 years of being a frustrated activist. I was trying hard to get people to focus on Second Amendment issues in San Diego. You know, California is an enormous mess, and you know the other states like to laugh at us, but I got to tell you, there aren't a lot of states out there that are all that great when it comes to Second Amendment anymore. You know, you look at, you know, I just went through Arizona. You know, Arizona has a state, their senator is the head of an anti-gun organization. They voted for Biden in the last election. I mean, you know, California has a reputation, and they've earned it for being extremely anti-gun. But guys, it is spreading all over the place, and it's getting, in some ways, it's getting worse. In some places that used to be strongholds, it's getting worse. However, I digress. I was doing a lot of activism to just try to get people to focus on Second Amendment issues. I wanted, elected officials to solve some of the problems. We had a ban on semi-automatic rifles, that they call it an assault weapons ban. We had a ban on a lot of commonly owned pistols. We have this roster, the safe handgun roster, that was in effect a slow-moving de facto ban on pistols. We couldn't get a concealed carry permit. We had a lot of problems, and the more I worked with different elections, the more frustrated I got. The more I realized that I was just kind of getting placated, and people weren't really paying attention to the Second Amendment. It was almost a novelty. Hey, here's the gun guy. He's going to talk about guns. Aren't guns cool? Okay, go away now so we can go talk about real politics. And I just endlessly frustrated. So what I did is I looked around San Diego to see, okay, what organizations are picking the elected officials? How are these elected officials getting into power? And I found out that on the right-hand side of the political spectrum, the Republican Party somewhat, and then there were a couple of political action committees, a couple of organizations that really were raising a bunch of money. They had full-time staff. They had access to media, and they were getting people elected. On the left-hand side of the spectrum, the political spectrum, the Democratic Party really was nowhere near as effective as people thought or were talking about. They really weren't doing much at all. It was mostly unions. On the left side of the political spectrum in San Diego, it was mostly unions. And again, the unions had full-time staff. They were raising big money. They were enormously focused. They had huge membership, and they had access to media. So I decided, all right, what I want to do, because the Republican Party, try as I might, would just not turn into a Second Amendment organization. Like I said, it was kind of, like I said, it was just kind of a novelty. They'd let me give a speech every now and then and give me a little, chuck on the shoulder and say, gee golly, thanks for doing what you're doing. But it really wasn't, I wasn't moving the ball. Sorry,
I'm taking notes. This was the Republican Party you said that was disregarding you?
Yeah, the San Diego Republican Party. So the local San Diego Republican Party. They just weren't, it just wasn't effective. I would go to different gun clubs, and private membership clubs, and they had what a friend of mine termed it battered gun owner syndrome, in that they just thought, if we just don't make any noise, if we just don't rock the boat, if we're real quiet, everyone will just leave us alone. And they were so used to losing that they didn't want to rock the boat. They just thought, hey, just leave us alone, and we don't want to get involved. So I figured out that wasn't going to work. So I sat down and really designed a plan, an idea that incorporated all the winning pieces, but focused it entirely on the Second Amendment. And one of the first decisions I made was to name the organization, and name the organization so that it's crystal clear what we're doing. I got a lot of advice from people that said, oh, well, you should call it the Freedom and Liberty Coalition to do good thing or whatever, right? All these convoluted names. And I said, nope, I want to go right for it. We're going to be San Diego County gun owners, period. And so it's crystal clear what we're trying to do, and then it's crystal clear that we're laser focused. We don't get involved in any other organizations, or I'm sorry, any other issues. We don't have formal ties with any other organizations. We have our agenda, and it's the Second Amendment, period. So we decided, we put together this plan, this program, to have full-time staff, to take membership, and the donations from the membership would do all kinds of things, but mainly it would help people get elected. We'd get people who we vet the resources they need to get elected. I didn't want to compete with other organizations. I didn't want to do what was already being done. Even if people thought that it wasn't being done effectively enough, I didn't want to fight with people on my side. I didn't want to split hairs, and I wanted to do something that wasn't being done. So we decided to focus just on local politicians. So city council, school board, sheriff, county board. I also didn't want to rely on, I felt like the gun community, and I think this is still a problem. The gun community is too reliant on lawsuits. We have way too many eggs in the lawsuit basket. And I think that I think part of it is that we're lazy, that we don't want to go out there and walk neighborhoods and get people elected and do the hard things like raise money. We just, we'll just sue. And then that's that. So I really, that wasn't ever really part of the plan. Lawsuits weren't ever really part of the plan. That changed a little bit, a lot of it later. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I got together, so I looked around and tried to figure out, well, what kind of entity do I want this to be? Do I want it to be a private business, like an LLC or a corporation? It can't be a 501c3. That's a charity, and they can't get involved in politics. Should it be a 501c4? I didn't really know. So I just picked a lot of people's brain and came up with a political action committee, a PAC. And the PAC gives the most amount of leeway, especially when it comes to political activity. And we could do everything we wanted. We could endorse candidates. We could give money to candidates. We could spend money on behalf of candidates. We could take donations. We could have full-time employees. We could do everything we wanted. So I opened up a PAC. I got an extremely knowledgeable and very professional CPA whose specialty was campaign finance, and said, hey, I need you to make sure that everything I do is done properly, and to the letter of the law, because there is a lot of very serious laws and very serious consequences when it comes to campaigns. And, San Diego we have 18 cities, we have a county, we have all these school boards. Each one of these cities has a different set of laws when it comes to, how you can spend money in politics. And then there's state and federal laws too. So that kind of thing, that nuts and bolts kind of thing is extremely important. If you raise money, and I've seen so many people and organizations, they storm in and they make this big splash and they don't do the little things right. They don't dot I's, they don't cross T's, and they're gone tomorrow. And I've seen people, there are heavy consequences. There's jail time for breaking campaign law. There are huge financial penalties for breaking campaign law. So I said, hey, I don't want to do anything in the gray area. I want to make sure everything's above board. So got a very qualified CPA to do that. Got together a group of volunteers and said, hey, I need leadership. I need some oversight. I need some credibility. And so boom, you guys are my board. We put together bylaws and we started taking membership. And the first year was touch and go. It was really, really tough. It took a while to gain some traction. I think the first year we signed up 400 members. But that was, that was 400 cups of coffee, for me, sitting down with people saying, hey, I have this idea, please help. I remember it was about a year into it when we got the first person who signed up that I didn't know, who I hadn't personally solicited. I actually called the guy and said, gee, how did you hear about us? And he had a friend who knew a guy and he talked about us, and boom. And I was just so tickled. I couldn't stop smiling all day. I couldn't believe that a stranger had heard of our organization and signed up. And I was so happy and proud.
How long after whatever you just actually, I should ask the question, what do you consider dotting the sentence? When did the organization start? And then what kind of time frame are we talking before that first member like that? Was that a week? Was that a month? Good question. Okay. So we started in 2015, towards the end of 2015. We had our first big event was Christmas 2015. We had a big Christmas party. And we had we added some giveaways, and I don't know, we had 200-300 people at this party. It was really amazing. So that first year, so basically 2016, we signed up about 400 people, 400 members. And it took about a year before that person who signed up, who was a stranger, it took about a year.
dotting the I's and crossing the T's, you have to, with a political organization, with a PAC, you have to get thorough and accurate information on donors. You have to know certain information on donors, their address, who they work for, their name, that sort of thing. When you spend money, so when money comes in or out of a PAC, it has to, that's where the law hits. You have to have certain paperwork in order to get money out of a political action committee account. Excuse me. You have to have certain information on all your donors. So that's really the serious stuff. When money moves in or out of the account, you have to do it properly. It has to be the right paperwork. It has to be for the right purpose. It has to be for the right.
You don't have like drone accounts with some rich person who creates 1,000 drone accounts with whatever the amount of money is so that they can move money to political campaigns under the thresholds or something, right?
Exactly right. So if the maximum amount you can give is $500 to a candidate, this prevents you from giving $500 and your business from giving $500 and your some alias giving $500. Exactly right. That's exactly what they're trying to avoid. But the other thing they're really trying to avoid with a lot of these campaign laws is they're really just simply trying to stop organizations from having such a big impact, because they do. PACs have an enormous impact on elections. So the harder they can make it, the better.
Is that true? Is that solely based on size, or can it have other tactics or other tools?
Well, so that's an excellent question. So there's two answers to that. Money is extremely important in politics. So money, if you can raise a bunch of money, you're going to have a way better chance of winning any election. Because, and it's not this nefarious thing, I've never seen anything in 7 years that was, unethical. Nobody's getting bought off. There aren't, there's nothing like that happens. That's all the movies. If you have more money to get your message in front of people, the more people are going to do what your message says. That's all it is. So if you have $10 and your opponent has $100,000, the ability to get your message in front of people with $100,000 is, extremely important. So voters are generally, they're kind of lazy and they're uninformed, unfortunately. They're living their life. They have kids to raise and a job. So if you can get information in front of them and say, hey, here's why you got to vote for this person, you're going to win. And it takes money to do that. Before our organization, I was a part of campaigns for great candidates. And they couldn't afford to give me a stack of flyers so I could walk door to door in a neighborhood, and just tell my neighbors about them. They couldn't even afford to give me 500 flyers. You're not going to win that way. So that's part of it. So the money is definitely part of it. If you want to outraise your opponents, every single time, it's extremely important. But the other part of it is, we called it San Diego County Gun Owners. We have a logo. We're laser focused. We're nonpartisan. Just Second Amendment. I wanted to create an organization whose messaging and purpose and actions were something that people could trust, because I knew we weren't going to get the millionaires that were going to fund our PAC and give us, tons of money. I knew that we were going to kind of be the Joe and Jane lunchbox of PACs. And we are. We've pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps, $10, $100 at a time. So what I wanted to make sure is that our organization always told the truth, told it straight, didn't look like an extremist organization, didn't look like a militia. I wanted to make sure that people could trust us, because trust goes a long way in politics, So those two things, if you can get a lot of money and you can, and reputation, basically money and reputation, that's enormously important in politics, because in politics, you really only have two tools: people and money. That's it. Your ideas don't matter. Your pedigree doesn't matter. If you went to Harvard or you didn't graduate high school, doesn't matter. What matters is you have enough people and money to win. That's it. If you have great ideas and you have no people and no money, you're going to just sit on the couch and yell at CNN and yell at Fox News, and nothing's going to happen. If you have horrible ideas and you have a ton of people and a ton of money, they're going to get implemented.
When you say people, we're talking not just the vote, but also the awareness and the, like you say, door-to-door stuff and the manning booths places and the being able to have a competent conversation with coworkers or people at church or school or whatever.
Exactly right. People to do all the above. People to, help you raise more money. People to,
and they know that the PACs are like an extract of people that are motivated to that, right? So if they know you're a person in a PAC, it's like having 100 voters or like some ratio of voters, right? Like these are people that are not just going to vote once maybe on our direction, but they're going to go out there and make a big noise about it before and after.
So I'll tell you a quick story. A year ago, there was a special election in a city in San Diego, La Mesa, and we endorsed a candidate, and she happened to be a Republican, and her district was way outnumbered Democrats. So there were way more Democrats in her district than Republicans. So she had an uphill battle. We endorsed her, and we had people walking. We had, I think, in like 3 or 4 weeks, we had something like 87 people that showed up at her office, took literature, walked neighborhoods, hit up voters in their house, said, "Hey, here's the person to vote for." There was one guy who on his Harley drove up and down the street with a vote for this candidate sign. She would run into people all the time. She had this story about how she went to the airport because she lost her phone. She had 2 phones. She was a realtor, so one phone was for work and one was for personal. She lost her phone. She went to the airport to go to the Lost and Found, and the guy at the Lost and Found said, "Oh yeah, I know who you are." She's like, "Well, how do you know who I am?" And the guy said, "San Diego County gun owners." And she just, everywhere she went, it was the most Fight Club moment I've ever heard of. Everywhere she went, people had heard of her because of San Diego County gun owners. So that's a force multiplier. People are going out and saying, "Hey, that we trust this person who's been endorsed because we know San Diego County gun owners, and we know they do their homework. And we know that they tell the truth, and we know that they, do all the things that are important when it comes to Second Amendment." So that's what I mean by people. People wearing logo T-shirts and people showing up and being a part of organizations, but their foundation is San Diego County gun owners. So that was a big part of what we did. We're up to 3,400 members, which I'm extremely proud of after 7 years. That first year, one of the other things that a lot of the organizations did is they had a gala. They had a big award ceremony gala where people would dress up, show up. So we started Gun Prom. It was originally called the Second Amendment Celebration Dinner. But all these activists got dressed up. I tell people that we hosed ourselves off and, took off the 511 and all the other gear that we wear at the range. And we put on suits and we went and had this gala, and someone made the joke that, "Hey, this is like Gun Prom." So it got nicknamed Gun Prom. And, we invite elected officials and folks that are locally famous, and we give away awards, and we just celebrate the Second Amendment. And it's a show. It's a fundraiser, but it's also a showpiece. We invite the news; they come down and cover it. So that's been enormously successful. And the other thing is, I really, truly, the gun world, the activist world, when it comes to the Second Amendment, has made an enormous mistake over the last 30 years, in that they've ignored the media. They've taken on this idea that, hey, we're not going to get a fair shake in the media. Therefore, we're going to, forget the liberal media. We're just going to ignore them. Well, that was a huge tactical error, because the media now just goes and tells their story to 90% of the nation, and we don't get to tell our side. So I engage with media. I spend a lot of time and a lot of effort, first off, crafting our message, and then reaching out to media and forming relationships, making myself available to anybody who wants to interview us. And we do a really good job of representing like I said, kind of the Joe and Jane lunchbox gun owner. I think it's crucial, and it's been very, very successful. Anytime there's any kind of Second Amendment or gun issue or anything like that, they immediately call us, and we get to tell our side of the story. One lesson I learned is if you drive the narrative, when you look at an article, when a reporter writes an article and there's 3/4 of the article is side A, and then 1/4 of the article is side B responding to side A, right? So I wanted to figure out, how do I get to be 3/4 of the article, and that you have to drive the narrative. You have to stick it out there and be what's happening and make the other side respond. So one of the ways we did that a few years ago, we came up with this idea. We had our $10,000 gun show challenge. Every time a gun show would come to town, the other side, the anti-gun side, would talk about how the sky's falling and all this horrible crime is happening, and oh my gosh, why are we having a gun show, and think of the children and all this whole thing. So we decided, okay, well, we're gonna have a press conference. And the point of the press conference is to offer $10,000 to anybody or any organization that can show that you can do all these things, buy a machine gun without a background check or whatever, while same day, at a California gun show. Show us that you can do that, and we'll donate $10,000. But we know that you're not going to be able to do that. And if you do that, that $10,000 is going to have to go to your legal defense fund. So every news station in town covered it. We got the write-up in the local paper. We got 3/4 of the article, and then the other side got 1/4 of the article, where they looked like buffoons. It's hard to respond to something, especially when you're being reasonable and logical. So that press conference and that driving the narrative thing, that's another thing we learned, is right off the bat, we got a lot of pressure to do marches and protests. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do marches and protests. We always look bad. Everybody always looks bad. They never work. The last time a march worked was, Alabama in the 60s with Martin Luther King. And that's it. Nothing else has really worked.
How about rallies? What's your feeling on rallies?
Same thing. Marches, rallies, protests. We all look like extremists. We don't have control of the message. People show up and that are maybe on the fringe, and then that's who the news that's who they target. And we look bad. So instead, I said, when I was talking to a friend, and he said, yeah, let's do this protest, let's do this march. And I said, how many people do you think you could get to show up if we do a march or a rally, like how many people do you think you could get to show up? And he said, I don't know, like 100. And I said, well, that's nothing. That's a failure. I said, what if we get those same 100 people to show up at a press conference? Because only 5-10 people usually show up at a press conference. Let's get 100 people to show up at a press conference. Because now, same thing, same message, same speech, but now you get TV cameras and you got 100 people there. That's a story. So we don't do rallies, protests, marches. We do press conferences and press releases. And that helps us get our name and our message and our voice, into people's living rooms. We're the 6 o'clock news where we've never been before. So I don't do protests, rallies, or marches ever. I just don't. We show up at city council meetings. We do press conferences. We do press releases. We do media interviews. And that's been enormously successful. I think, and this January 6th thing with Trump, I think that's the best example of what I'm talking about. They just absolutely.
That's definitely the largest scale, right? People will have different opinions on both sides, because there's, the whole peaceful protest thing or whatever. There's two sides, all of those issues too, and people are willing to accept one version of how that went down, but then they're only willing to accept knowing there's two versions of everything. It's like people are often selective on which one they're going to accept the one version of. But I think you're right. There's very difficult to you might have the best message in the world put out there, but they're going to do whatever they want. There was a classic picture back in the day of a bunch of people that went to a gun buyback, and they went there armed. They went there with sidearms and long arms over their shoulders. And from one angle, it looked like they were at some kind of standoff. And from the other angle, they were sort of doing the, the guns aren't the problem. Ask me why, they're trying to be peaceful but armed, the awareness type of thing. And it was all about the pictures. The two pictures were showing you the two messages taken from the exact same thing, right? So right. I think that's what you're trying to say, right? So it's interesting.
Exactly
yeah.
It's exactly what I'm trying to say. Is it, and the January 6th thing, put aside wherever you are politically on that, just look at it from a PR standpoint. Did the people that day further their message with people that disagree with them? No, they made it worse. So we've completely avoided that. We really truly we want to reach out to people who agree with us, the low hanging fruit, and get them involved. Doing something meaningful, doing meaningful activism. We want to reach out to people who are on the fence, who can easily be influenced and educated to agree with us, and we want to reach out to people who are who disagree with us, and we want to be able to figure out what makes them tick, so that we can resonate with them. I don't want to tell them what's important to me about the Second Amendment. I want to know, how can I make the Second Amendment important to them? And one of the ways we figured that out is there's a book written by a guy named Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T, who is a self-proclaimed left-wing NYU professor, and he wanted to figure out how do people make decisions on politics. How do they come to their conclusions? And he figured out that there were really 6 moral foundations that people base their decisions on. Sanctity was one of them, authority, liberty, caring, fairness. There were 6 of them. And he found out that if you're right of center politically, you typically value all 6 of them pretty equally. And if you're left of center, you really only value caring and fairness. So let me give you an example real quick. So like one of those 6 moral foundations was sanctity.
What was his name again? I'm just trying to take notes. What's
sure, Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T. And it's the 6 moral foundations theory. So one of those 6 moral foundations was or is sanctity. So if you say, hey, look, I care about the Second Amendment because it's in the Constitution. The Constitution is the founding document of our country, and that's important. It's written by great men, and we founded this great nation. Okay, so that's based on sanctity, the sanctity of the Constitution. Now, if you're talking to somebody that doesn't value sanctity, they're not going to care. You're not going to convince them. If you're sitting there saying, hey, the Constitution is important to me, but you're talking to somebody who doesn't care about the sanctity, or the importance of the Constitution, you're never going to convince them. So he found out that most people, pretty much across the board, like political opinions that are founded in caring and fairness. So, for example, I support the Second Amendment and people's ability to be armed because I care about single moms who are trying to defend themselves and their kids. It's not fair that people who aren't cops or military, don't get to defend themselves. That's not fair. So all of our messaging is based on caring and fairness. You never see us, scream about, hey, it's the Constitution or, anything like that. I mean, it's not that we don't value the Constitution. We do, but we're trying to reach out to people who don't. We want them. We're trying to educate and influence them. So we make all of our messaging based on caring and fairness. We talk about people who are unable to defend themselves, and therefore, they need a firearm in order to protect themselves. We talk about how unfair it is. For example, one of the cases that we make a lot that really truly resonates is the fact that California has a disproportionate amount of laws regulating firearms, and California and I'm sorry, these laws are disproportionately used against people of color. So, therefore, and as we all know, a lot of these laws are really historically based in racism. Well, pointing out the fact that, hey, all these laws that you support are really what they're doing is they're putting, Black and Hispanic men between 18 and 40 in jail for a long time and destroying communities. That starts to resonate with people. Maybe it doesn't resonate with you, but you're not trying to resonate with you. You already agree, right? You're trying to find people who, the Second Amendment maybe isn't their top priority, or they have a different set of values. They look at things a little bit differently. So we're trying to figure out a message that resonates. Why does the Second Amendment matter to me? Well, that's why it should matter to you, because California they're putting all these laws in place and they're using them disproportionately against people of color. That resonates. That's a caring and fairness argument. We care about people of color. We care about their communities. It's not fair that these laws are put in place and they don't exist anywhere else, and they're turning people into felons, for doing normal activity. So Jonathan Haidt's message, his research rather, and what he found is something we use in our messaging all the time. And what's the result? Well, the result is the media trusts us and says, hey, we know that if we go to San Diego County gun owners, we're going to get a well thought out, accurate message from somebody that our audience is going to care about listening to. And we get a ton of positive feedback. Every time we're on the radio or in print or on TV, we get a ton of positive feedback. It's extremely important.
Have you noticed that it sounds like the same way that the DC project, one element of their project is to go to DC and meet with, DC and state level and meet with the representatives to be an example of gun owners for those representatives, but also then to leave their business card, so to speak, and become a person in that person's list of contacts. If they have a question or something, they know that they're an expert in the field. It sounds like you're doing that with the media by kind of training them to understand that you're going to give them what they're looking for, a message that resonates with their viewers and not just a message that's a louder version of whatever's being yelled on the NRA ads.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So media, and we do the same thing with elected officials too at the local level. Hey, look, in fact, we have this pledge that we have people sign. And the pledge is, it's not to agree with us, every time. All the pledge says is if something comes up that's gun or Second Amendment related, some kind of vote or something like that comes up, that you pledge to just sit down and talk to us. That's it. Just let us, let us make our case and give you feedback on it.
Sorry, that's the politicians or that's the news people?
Politicians. We give that pledge to politicians.
Is there more to it? That's an element of it, or that's the whole pledge? That's
the whole pledge, and that's it. I mean, it's a softball, right? But at least it gets it. It makes them, if they can't sign that, if they can't say that, hey, I'm not even going to talk to you, if they do say I'm not even going to talk to you, when an issue comes up, that's not just, first it tells you a lot about who they are, but it's also, even people that support them won't support that level of extremism. But the other thing is it gives us a way, a foot in the door. So, if you want to sit down and talk to a politician, especially one that disagrees with you, what's the catalyst? Why would they meet with you? Well, if we talk about these pledges, at least it gets a foot in the door, and you sit down and talk, and when you're knee to knee with these politicians, and just say, hey, look, we're not trying to get you to commit to voting for or against anything. We just want you to talk to us when something comes up. Can you agree to that? And that at least starts the conversation, at least gets the foot in the door, and opens things up for when the time comes when we do need to talk to them.
Have you needed to engage that or play that card?
Well, all the time. All the time. Yeah, on the local levels, even the school boards and city councils, They do these resolutions, they have these regulations. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. So our ability to get in there and talk to them and explain, why it is or isn't good, is crucial.
So the next follow-up to that would be, how often is it successful? I mean, obviously you're still doing it, so it can't be completely discouraged.
Well, so success, it depends on which level is it. It's successful at helping us get in the door so we can have a conversation. It's successful at getting people to talk to us when the time comes. Is it success? Are we drastically changing minds, but just by getting them to sign a pledge? A lot of people, their minds are already made up. So we've definitely killed some things. In La Mesa, the city of La Mesa, again, they were going to force everybody to basically store their firearms locked or disabled. That was a regulation that was coming up, and we got that killed. We got at least one of the people who really truly wasn't on our side necessarily. He was kind of wobbly. We helped get him to vote with us by being reasonable, having an open dialogue, having a relationship, that sort of thing. That being said, there's a lot of, like, the city of San Diego has 9 city council members. 8 of them are vehemently opposed to the Second Amendment. So no matter how many conversations that we have with them, are we going to change their mind? Probably not. The real solution is to get the right people elected, so we don't have to change their mind. We already know they're going to make the right decision. I think another way it works is that it makes us look very, very reasonable. If they're unwilling to sign it, or if you're an organization that's forcing people to make a pledge, to only vote a certain way, you look like an extremist, especially here in California. In California, we're behind enemy lines, so we're the minority opinion, and we're trying to influence the majority. You have to do things a certain way in order to be effective.
How often does that change? Like, is that something that you can pretty much come up with a recipe that's pretty common sense and it doesn't waver, or is that something that's in flux constantly and that's an element of it is keeping up with the current or whatever?
My apologies. I don't. Which part? Maybe explain that a little bit more.
I guess as you were finishing there, just talking about the way that you're dealing with the politicians, and I was asking you, how do you measure success, or does that card work? And you said sometimes. So I guess I was saying, nope, I lost it too. So yeah, trying to talk and type everything here.
Well, actually, that's okay. I think I understand what you're saying. I can tell you that the more members we got, when we only had 400 members, we were kind of, gee golly gosh, it sure would be nice if we were still aggressive and straight to the point, but we also knew where we stood in politics. With over 3,000 members and with a 6-figure budget, we're actually able to spend money on campaign. Things have definitely, it's a little bit more, we can definitely be a little bit more, have a little more swagger, have a little bit more influence. When people have heard of you, when you have a track record of success, maybe you don't have to be as timid. Maybe that's the right term. We don't have to be as timid anymore, even though we're still outnumbered. People have seen that, hey, you know what? We have a number of times been the difference between winning and losing in elections. And we've definitely been the difference between winning and losing when it comes to these resolutions and regulations and that sort of thing. If you can blow somebody's phone up or convince people not to, that sort of thing. So that's changed a little bit. You get to walk a little taller and your chin's up a little bit more if as you get more and more successful and as you grow.
Oh, I guess that's what I was trying to ask. And so, is that staying consistent, or is an element of it that you have to constantly be changing with the current? Because I don't know how fast politicians change. Did you say that there was 9 committee members there? Is that something like yearly it's changing and they're just always anti-gun, but they've always got a different, secondary issue? I'm guessing anti-gun is their first issue. They just also are anti-gun, but some of them are there for schools, some of them are there for traffic, some of them are there for some other reason.
Right. You're exactly right. And that was part of the problem was, even the people that agreed with us on Second Amendment, it was always like their fourth or fifth issue. And
like they could care because it's also fighting uphill, right? Like they saw no reason to go after it because it wasn't something that was even on anybody's radar, right?
Yeah, it was. But it was, there'd just been so much. It was just, there was so much else. There were so many, immigration, taxes, you name the other hot button. We were always like third or fourth. And a big challenge was to push our issue up to number one in people's priority. I've seen cities in the last, so we've been around for 7 years. I've seen cities become more pro Second Amendment, and I've seen a couple of cities become less, or I'd say more hostile towards the Second Amendment. So we've had, some successes, and we've had some, not so successes. But the reality is in San Diego's got 3.5 million people. We're bigger than like 19 states. It's an enormous county. But the reality is more people own a gun, more people carry a gun, more people vote based on guns, more politicians are in office because of guns than ever before in San Diego. So, that part, there's a lot of victory, even though there's, something. There's no such. I like to say that there's two kinds of people out there. There's people who agree with me, and then there's the undecided. So the people that don't agree with me, the anti-gun folks, well, they're just undecided. We're just going to have to keep working on them. So you only lose when you stop playing the game. So some things have gone our way. More, I'd say by and large, more things have gone our way than haven't. But we just keep fighting. And and I think, you're talking to activists, there's no end. There's not a day where it's over. The price of liberty is, ever vigilance, right? Isn't that how it goes? I mean, you have
liberty is eternal vigilance. Yep.
Yeah. So there's never going to be a time where we can just hang up our hats and say, hey, we're done. Everything's, everything's gravy now. But the importance of like San Diego County gun owners, of course, Orange County gun owners and Inland Empire gun owners is now there's an infrastructure so that we can continue having this message and get the message out there on a consistent basis. Because before there'd be some big crisis and boom, everybody would scramble and they'd try to get a message out and they'd try to organize. And by the time they got organized, it was over. But there's never going to be a time that you don't have to be an activist. I mean, we live in the country of the self-governed. We can't just leave it up to other people. We're always going to have to be involved. We're always going to have losses. We're always going to have wins, but we always have to continue to keep going. There's never going to be a time when we're just done. No matter what court case comes out. Heller came out in 2008, and everybody told me that was it. The whole world's happy now. You can do anything you want now. And then 2010, McDonald came out. And, here we go now. This is it. This really has to be it. This is the one. And now we have the Bruin case, which is great. It's better than the Heller case, to be honest with you. I think the Bruin decision is way better than the Heller decision. But it's not the end. The Bruin decision is really just a tool for us to use for the next 10 years, 15 years, whatever. But there's never going to be an end. We're always going to have to fight this fight.
And I try not to interrupt, but I'm going to go and interrupt here. So here's my campaign. Sure. I don't want to start calling it the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association decision because number one, it ain't Bruin's decision. He lost, or she lost. I don't know who Bruin is. And second, Bruin is just their somebody who's got 100 cases with their name on it. So why not make it the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association decision because it's a win, and we get to say New York State Rifle and Pistol Association all the time. It's a cool thing to say.
I'm gonna. You have my word that I'm gonna start. I'm adopting that right now. I think that's a great idea. Alan Corwin here in Arizona. The writer. Sure. Yeah, I know the name. Yeah. I'm not sure. We talked a lot.
Alan Corwin is the Gun Owners Guides, and he's a publisher, and he's done a bunch of books. Gun Saves Lives and the Billboards was his campaign here in Arizona. So anyway, his thing is taking back the language. And ever since listening to him at Gun Rights Policy Conference, like 2005, or actually a little bit before that, I won't say shooter, because screw that. We're shooters. They're trying to take our word. That's an engineered campaign to take our word from us. They're murderers, and there's, murderers. That's about it. There's people that do murders, right? But shooters are us. So, that's giving us a word away. And he's got a whole bunch of them. I'm sure you've heard the paragraph from back in the day. It was like, it's been kind of memed around a while. But anyway, I wanted to interrupt you just there to say that. But, we had, I like to think of it this way, like you say, liberty requires eternal vigilance. At one point there was muskets and then bolt action, semi-autos, and it goes on, right? Like the evolution of our technology goes on. Well, at some point we wrote down how to use that bolt action or that musket with a quill pen and then a pencil and then a ballpoint pen, and now the internet and phones and social media, right? So we've got to be comfortable and capable with these tools to fight on all battlefields, on all levels for, like you say, liberty, right? I think of liberty as individual freedom with everybody working together, like everybody's individual freedom hanging out together is liberty. So if we want to protect that, we have to figure out a way to take that ability and hand it off to the next generation in a way that doesn't take much effort and inspires others and motivates others. So that's why I agree with you 100% that the efforts towards working towards a long game in I don't forget a gaming strategy, what they call it, but it's not like a basketball game or a baseball game where we're looking for score points and have a win or maybe a season. We're looking to stay in the game. It's the long game. You win this game by being in the game. You lose the game by having your arguments taken away. And I believe we do that. You probably agree with me that we do that by education and awareness. As soon as there's enough people that are aware of what guns really are, this concept that one bullet can go 5 times faster than another bullet would drop immediately. It'd be lost, right? There would be nobody to laugh at it. It would just be unacceptable. It wouldn't be able to be said. And that's how you take it away from them. No amount of yelling or complaining about your rights or your property is going to take that away from them. Educating everybody who could care less so that they know that it's like saying something as obscure as or as crazy as saying red cars are more dangerous than other color cars. Like nobody would say that because everyone knows. And that's how we win. So I think, a lot of stuff we're talking about here is towards that goal. But I think, once we learn how to use the internet and are comfortable with the ways of communicating the same way we were back in the day. As soon as people could write with paper, I think we're the country that started the press and paper and all that kind of crap too. We were comfortable with that stuff. As soon as we were comfortable with muskets and the evolution to cartridges and bolt actions and the rest, some people had to come kicking and screaming, I'm sure, to a lever action. Oh, I don't trust it because of the volcanic. You kidding me? The volcanic was so weak. I'm not shooting no lever action. And then finally, they came around to it. And then eventually the lever actions looked at as old fashioned. So same thing with the internet, right? It's just another piece of tech and social media, however we want to look at it. But anyway, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I appreciate you spending some time with us late at night like this. For us, it's not that bad. You're on California time. It's like 10 o'clock for us. But everybody who's watching this live, I appreciate you joining us in the middle of the night for most of you. But feel free to ask questions. My goal is to talk about a little bit about what you're doing, because like I say, most people I'm assuming knew that. So the why and the how, and you've really gone into a lot of that. And I attempt not to interrupt you. I've interrupted you a couple of times here, but I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So the big one, I think you've kind of mentioned it, but I'm going to ask it just directly in an open-ended way. How do you stay motivated as an activist?
Boy, that's a good question. I think that I think, man, I wish I had a really good answer.
Let me give you a chance to think about it. You're in California. For 7 years, you've been a professional Second Amendment activist. I was going to ask you this question. Maybe it can help kind of just give you a second to think about it. How many gun owners are there in California? We've done the math and thought it was about 7 million. Are we anywhere near right? Something like 40 million people in California?
So somewhere between 35 and 40 million people. I don't know. I've never done the numbers for California, but in San Diego, we estimate it's about 400,000 people out of 3.5 million.
Okay, so you have an idea of how many in that county. So then I was going to ask kind of also, because I'm still kind of figuring it all out for people that don't pay attention to California. San Diego's essentially the border with Mexico, the international border with Mexico, correct? And then up to LA. And is it everything all across Arizona also, or is that another county?
No, there's Imperial County, about halfway halfway in the middle of the state there. It splits.
Okay,
San
so for
Diego,
people that don't realize, like California hits the international border with Mexico, and that's where San Diego is, and Tijuana's on the other side, and that's where you've got the naval base, and it's pretty cool. A lot of people go there for vacation. As you come east towards Arizona, you're going to hit that desert, the real desert. Everybody thinks about the sandy desert of the south end of the whatever that Salton Sea or whatever. So you're talking San Diego is from the mountains there going upwards until it hits Los Angeles County, or is there another county up there?
Orange County. Orange County is the next one up north.
Okay, so how big? My question was going to be then. Now that we have some idea of the geography of the area, how big of a percentage of California is San Diego?
Boy, that's a good question. So there's well, let me give you a couple of numbers here. So there's, like I said, between 35 and 40 million people in California. There's 3.5 million people in San Diego County. There's about 3 million, 3.2 million in Orange County, Orange County is basically a suburb of LA, is really what Orange County is. Orange County is where Disneyland is.
I wouldn't even know where the boundaries are. You said there's 3 million there?
About 3.2 million, something like that. And then if you go from Orange County, if you go east, there's Riverside County and San Bernardino County, and they're combined about 4 million people there. So we have an organization in San Bernardino and Riverside. We have an organization in Orange. We have an organization in San Diego. So combined, that's 3.6. That's like 10 million. So that's like a third, maybe somewhere around a third or just under a third of the state. We have organizations and counties that represent about a third of the state. And then next year, we're actually looking at opening up LA County gun owners.
Right on. So in other words, that's not a dwindling. That's a growing exponentially type of thing, growing quickly.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. So the influence there, and like you say, 7 years worth of wins. Now you've got the gun prom, which evolved and has taken on kind of its own thing. You've got the radio show. And then I'm sure I'm missing things. I don't know everything you've been doing. But with all that, again, how do you stay motivated? Or
how do you stay motivated? So I think that I just had a conversation with a friend who's a part of the organization about this. You have to focus on the positives. You have to focus on you have to define success for yourself. So if you just sit there and think, gee gosh, this didn't go right and that didn't go right, and we didn't win here, and Biden and this and Gavin Newsom and all yeah, you're gonna lose motivation. But if you think about, hey, I just had this conversation with this guy who didn't like guns and now he does, or hey, I just trained somebody, or hey, I just did a fundraiser, or we just did an event. Focus on the positive. All the little things. Make sure that you're defining your success and that you're not, kind of this Eeyore, like, gee, nothing's ever gonna go right. This Debbie Downer. Oh golly gosh. Do the things that you're passionate about, and then be extremely happy with it. That you're having an influence, that the earth is a different place thanks to you walking it. I focus on that a lot. In fact, that's exactly how I stay motivated, because I know that what we're doing is extremely important. We're not Second Amendment activists because guns are cool toys. That's not why we do this. A lot of us are far, far, far deeper into the meaning of the Second Amendment and what it means to our country, what it means to us as individuals. I like to tell people, there's about 5,000 years of human history, written human history. And it's only been in about the last couple hundred years that you could effectively defend yourself. And that's because they invented a portable firearm. And in that last 200 or so years, 200, 300 years, there have been enormous strides in individual rights. We've had an entire country built on the idea that the government is there to defend your rights. that it's the country of the self-governed. We've seen enormous strides in the rights of, minorities, women, you name it. That's not a coincidence. That didn't just happen by accident. The reason that happened is because people were able to defend themselves. That's what's bringing around this extremely and historic focus on individuals and liberty. So this thing, I frankly feel blessed to live in this small sliver of human history where we're able to truly defend ourselves. And that's why we're involved. It's that important to us. So focus on those, that level of importance, and the things that you're doing matter at that level. I don't know how I could do anything else after this. I don't know what job anyone could possibly offer me that would be anywhere near as fulfilling as defending that level of importance, in society.
Well, I guess if we're going to catch you off guard in the middle of the night with a question like that, we'll accept that as an answer. So appreciate it. That was a great answer. So I don't want to just appreciate that. Thank you. Then another question, I've kind of taken the shorthand as we were talking, and we've already hit a couple of them. You mentioned when you were building the organization at the beginning, were folks skeptical, or were they scared? When you talked about going to other gun groups or did you say gun clubs, I think? And I didn't know if you meant literally like going to a range. I know in California, sometimes you have to like a member of a range or whatever. Did you mean like go to a range meeting, or did you mean like a club of marksmen or a club of hunters? Like they get together like a bass or a fishing club?
Yeah, we have some of the ranges are membership based, so you have to be a member to shoot there.
Okay, so when you took it to those kind of organizations, you said that they were not necessarily, they were kind of well, you didn't use that exact word, but that they were similar to being the gun shy. I'm gonna use that pun. But scared, saying, hey, if we stay quiet, they'll leave us alone. Which I got to assume at a range, it's even worse, because then it's noise and everybody else wants to use that land. And here in Arizona, we have a lot of public land, not very much private land, and then a lot of it's reservations, so we can't do nothing on there. So there's a lot of dual use or multi-use public lands, and a lot of issues with horseback riders, four-wheelers, bird watchers, people who want it quiet, people who don't care how noisy it's going to get, people who can work together, people who won't work together. I can't even imagine the scale in California with the number of people and everything. So when you go to one of those kind of groups, the number of influences got to be all over the place. I guess my question was going to be, were they like that? Were they just more like scared, or were they skeptical that an organization coming along couldn't do it? Were they like eager but skeptical of you, or were they just like not going to do it even if some superhero came by?
First off, there were a lot of people that were extremely supportive, but I think even a lot of the people that were extremely supportive were also realistic, and were kind of secretly skeptical, like, nah, all right, let's see how this works out. But there are definitely huge groups of people, gun owners who just, that's never going to work. I have a few stories of, there's one guy who's a member. He's a really great guy. I met him at a gun show. I had our booth up, and I was telling him, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to try to do. And he poo-pooed it all day long. That's never going to work. Nothing good is ever going to happen. And, he's got his carry permit. He's an active member. He comes to the meetings. He comes to our events. He wears our logo, So yes, a ton of people were extremely skeptical. I kept my resume up to date, man. I got to tell you, there's a lot of reasons this organization shouldn't have worked, but we just refused to stop, and we stayed focused. And so even the skeptical people, we have such a great track record now that it's hard to argue. We've really truly proven that what we're doing it works. And it's funny. So we started an organization in Orange County Gun Owners. We started an organization, Inland Empire Gun Owners, up in Riverside, San Bernardino. We're looking at LA, went up to even to the Bay Area, San Francisco. Everywhere we go and we talk about the plan, or everywhere I go and talk about the plan, we get the same feedback, and it brings me back to 7 years ago. You know, when we were starting in San Diego, it's all the same pushback. That's never going to work. Nothing good's ever going to happen. You know, the state's lost. You know, there's too many people that, you know, no one will ever talk about that they're gun owners. Same stuff over and over and over again. But I got to tell you, what we're doing works. It's a heavy lift. It's hard. It's not easy, but it works. It's exactly what should happen and how it should happen in the world of politics.
So as you answered that one, it made me think to ask this question. And if you're not too constricted on time or kicking me out,
I got all the time. Keep going. Absolutely.
I appreciate it. So, well, be careful because I will go long, but I appreciate it. So that problem that haven't had the opportunity to ask too many people this question, but I think I might start asking it in my rotation. But you're in California, and from what you just described, it sounds like you've probably had more contact with and probably more frustration from and with. So my question is, how do you feel about and how do you deal with FUDs?
I think that you have to remember that they're on your side, you know. So I always ask, you know, people ask, like, you know, typically how it happens is someone will ask me a question, I'll answer it, and then they'll say, oh, well, so and so says it's the opposite. And then I'll just go right to them. Hey, man, you know, here's who I am. Here's where I'm from, whatever. I just want to let you know, I just talked to so-and-so and they said this, and I wanted to clarify and show you, you know, this, that, and the other thing. It means that you got to remember that they're friends. And if somebody is telling you bad information, you know, it's spreading. So go right to the source, show them, you know, in a polite way, you know, we're friends. We're on the same side. No need to be rude, and just, you know, hey, here's what's going on, man. But then you got to remember too, you can't spend a career if this guy's not going to believe you, or he's not going to, whatever. He's never going to, you know, come around exactly your way of thinking. You got to be able to walk away. You know, all right, well, thanks. You know, but that's another advantage. You know, we have Gun Owners Radio, we have our blogs on our website, we have a lot of channels that we've set up. So if we do need to get a message out, we're able to do it. So I'd say to handle FUDs, do two things. One is go right directly to them, be super polite, put your arm around them and say, hey, you know, let me show you why what you're saying isn't accurate. And then two, you got to just be more effective at communication than they are, and make sure that you set up, you know, the ability to communicate with people so that your message gets out in front of their message.
Oh, okay. So I'm trying to take notes, but that actually took me in a different direction. So in other words, don't try to necessarily have some kind of word battle with them if they're not interested, and you try to explain it as best you can and they're not budging. Just to put a clear message out with your position to challenge, or just to be another example for people who might be listening. And that's awesome. Yeah. So then you're not really confronting them as much as offering. Well, and the thing is, there's hardly too many FUDs that are out there effectively getting a message out on too many platforms. But
right.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because like I said, I mean, California's got a whole different situation going on there. You've got a whole history of stuff, and just so many more people than most of us have to deal with. You know, it's just everything's different situations there. So I appreciate that answer too. So is it difficult to balance? So I forget when I put this one down here, but probably when you were describing putting together the organization, or when you're talking about working with media at some point, is it difficult to balance the messaging to media versus recruitment to new members? And in this, like we kind of just mentioned here, the multiple messages that probably got to go out depending on which 2A or which gun person you might be trying to reach. But is it difficult to do both, to send messages out with a message, you know, with a reason and with an intent to the media versus out to our own, like, you know, internal messaging?
No, there's no difference between messaging. You know, whether it's new members or prospects or media or politicians, the message is consistent. You know, but what we do is we base it on, you know, the foundation that will resonate with the most amount of people. So, you know, that's why the idea that caring and fairness thing, you know, that those two things resonate with almost everybody. that's why we picked to talk about that. But I definitely spend a lot of time crafting a message. You know, if a reporter wants to do an interview, you know, I really, you know, a 2-minute interview with a reporter on the news, you know, if somebody turns on the 6 o'clock news and they see a 2-minute report and I have, you know, 25 seconds of a quote, that took me an hour to prepare for. You know, how am I going to explain this to them? What am I going to say? What messages must air? You know, and I prepare before that because it's that important. And then we use those media clips to talk to prospects and to talk to members and show them, you know, hey, here's what we're talking about. Here's what we think about, you know, XYZ, or here's what we think about, you know, whatever the issue of the day is. So we don't. So I guess you won't see like a you know, some big strong whatever, you know, hoorah message to the members, and then some gee golly gosh, you know, member or message to the public. It's not the way we operate at all. I try to. I think we do a very good job of staying very, very consistent.
Right on, because I was thinking it was more of like a juggling, not so much because of different. I was just thinking it was more of a having a different conversation more than a different message. So that makes a lot of sense. If you're only putting out one message, I guess, and then that message is also recruitment because you're putting that message out in such a way that somebody be proud and want to support. So it's just kind of obvious to jump on board and support the organization that's got this message that you appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, I was nervous too. I still sometimes when we get into the media and we do this, you know, this fairness and caring, you know, messaging, you know, it's sincere and it's real. But I remember being very weary, or very worried, I should say, about, you know, will other people get this? You know, is this, if they see the Second Amendment argument in case put in a different way, will they accept that or not? And tons of people, we really do get a lot of positive feedback for the way we talk about issues and the way we talk about the Second Amendment. So, you know, I got to tell you, I think gun owners, one of the things I really love about working with San Diego County gun owners and all the other organizations, gun owners are pillars of society, very thoughtful, you know, very meaningful, you know, self-reliant, tend to be great people. So they get it. You know, it's pretty easy to be able to, they're sophisticated enough to understand exactly what's going on when we put out a message. So it's been really great.
The next question would be, when we were talking about, well, I was asking about rallies, but I think you were talking about the marches and stuff like that more. Are there, just so kind of going along with that area, are there any other gatherings for Second Amendment or for gun owners that are more effective than rallies or marches that you see as a potential?
We have monthly meetings, and we try to organize those meetings so that, yeah, they're fun and interesting and social, but so that if people walk in, whether they're new or they've been a part of the organization for a while, we want them to walk into those monthly meetings and walk out with something to do. If they come to that meeting and they think to themselves, hey, I want to be effective and I want to actually do something, we get that message across to them at these monthly meetings. You know, we do a lot of events. We're constantly, you know, education events or seminars on how to get your CCW, or we do shooting socials where we teach new shooters. We have a women's program called Not Me, where we teach women. The idea is to stop sexual assault and domestic violence by making sure that any woman who asks, is taught how to buy a gun, is taught, you know, how to use a gun, and we get her help getting her carry permit. And we have an army of women volunteers who help women do that. So we have a ton of events, and I think the key is that people walk out of those events not feeling like they just wasted their time. So when they show up, you gotta have some kind of call to action, like, hey, here, even if they don't do it, at least you can say, hey, you know what, there's 5 things that we need people to do. Pick one or pick 2, or at least what's available. So I think those kinds of events are far more important. Rather than organizing a rally or a march or a protest, organize a support for a campaign, a neighborhood walk, organize some kind of educational seminar, something like that. I think that's far more effective and important.
Right on. I appreciate that also, because that's, I don't know if you'd ever been asked that before, but it's super well thought out as far as, not just being, so often we're contrary, like, oh, I don't like this. Well, why? Well, I don't know. I don't like it. So appreciate that.
Well, I think there's a lot of people out there that disagree with me on the don't do rallies and protests and marches. I think there's a lot of people out there that disagree with me. And I think there's a lot of gun owners who would argue with me, and I absolutely respect your opinion. This one's mine, and I've really truly put it into practice, and I've seen it work. And I really truly seen rallies, protests, and marches not work. So it's not always easy, but it's definitely something. It's not always easy to say, because I know that I think I'm probably in the minority when I say this, to not do rallies, protests, and marches. But it is something I've put a lot of thought into and a lot of analysis behind.
Well, you mentioned that, I guess, when you said that you research the positions, right, before you put them out there. You don't just casually chat about it. But no, that's a bullshit question to ask, because you make a good point there, that there's a lot of good potential. And it's not like a rally. I mean, if you're talking, it depends, I guess, what people are going to call a rally. I mean, I've been to a bunch of 2A rallies, and none of them have been crazy. They've all been kind of weird or boring, mostly, and not very effective. Potentially, depending on how you want to count effectiveness or whatever. But the fact that they existed is better than them not existing, for sure. And the fact that they give exercise to the organizations. But I agree with you on all those aspects. So all I'm saying is that you could apply some of the things that you just mentioned there, as far as having a call to action, letting people walk away understanding that there was a reason for the event and that they can participate, that they play a role in that. And they can literally walk away, especially if they were motivated to show up because they want to do something. You give them something to do rather than something to watch. That's what it's all about. So, if a rally turned into more of a, let's get together and teach somebody how to be an activist, I think that's kind of what you kind of ended with too, making it into some sort of an event with a reason, like, goal. So I believe that, just asking the question and walking away from it would be a bullshit way to ask that question. So I guess, again, I appreciate that you're asking, or that you mentioned that one. And I think that as far as if I would have just, before we talked, somebody would have challenged me and said, I don't think there should be 2A rallies, I'd have been like, yeah, let's talk about it. Because I'm a big fan. I've been to many of them. And, but what you just said, there's nothing you said there was wrong. In fact, some of my biggest gripes about 2A rallies is that you don't walk away exactly with what you just said. Like, you put a lot of effort. I don't know if you've ever been to one in New Mexico, but going to stupid Santa Fe sucks. Like, Santa Fe is super old. Their rally is in the middle of their oldest part of town, and it's super hard to get there. They could have had a gun shop and a bus and like brunch after, could have made it a big thing, make it, like you say, into a social event. So the rallies there is the optics for the news, turn it into a press conference, like you said. None of that happened. Instead, it was a bunch of just randomness and, the casual randomness, or whatever you call that, the roll of the dice, and then the roll of the dice of what media decided to show up. Luckily, it's in the middle of stupid Santa Fe, which is impossible to get through. So there was no media there either. But again, yeah, that's one of my only gripes, is that you end up driving from Tucson to Santa Fe. It's quite a bit of effort. And then, to experience it, would have been great if there would have been a little bit more going on. Even something as simple as some exercises on getting people to meet each other, instead of just standing there like a bunch of awkward teenagers at a dance or something. But anyway, so I appreciate that. And like I say, I'm open-minded enough to think that I agree with you, that I could definitely fight either way on should there be rallies, because there's potential for rallies to be really bad. I've always known that, but I also like the idea of setting precedents, and every single decent rally is showing that rallies don't have some natural tendency to go bad. That's just everybody's worst fear, right? That, oh, it's going to go bad, and then we'll have bad optics, although it's never happened, even the craziest one. But anyway, I agree with you. There could be a lot more going on, and that should be a challenge. The only people I can think of that would take up that challenge, because everybody else is kind of satisfied just to do them, because unfortunately they don't happen with enough frequency and with organizations with enough like real interest, I guess I'd call it, like, you know, full-time interest in it, that they don't deal, you know, they're just happy to put it on, and if it goes through, they're okay with it. But the Virginia Citizens Defense League seems like they put a lot of pride and a lot of effort into their rallies, and they did get, you know, a lot accomplished with theirs. And again, it just seems like a kind of organization that would put a bunch of effort into those kind of aspects or features, I guess, if they were brought up.
Yeah, and I'm not criticizing any organization for doing it. I'm just suggesting there are other effective things to do.
No, and that's another point of it. Yeah, exactly. So again, I appreciate not just being contrary, because a lot of people are satisfied with just pissing on something, not offering anything, as an example. And you got a bunch of them. So the next question is, are there already any strategies for when politicians are better in California, or is that kind of long-term stuff just fantasy at this point, or is it kind of, again, knowing this is long game, is there stuff you could set? Because I'm sure people think about, I don't know if it actually happens, that the antis are setting up these complicated traps for us where, you know, this, and this, and then they got us. And sometimes it's, I'm sure, just consequence or happenstance, but either way, have we long-term strategies? Do we look at things like, well, if we nibble here and here and here, then we're setting ourselves up for that, or when the politicians are our way, we'll have this in place?
Well, there's some very obvious things that we want to get rid of, like the assault weapons ban, the roster, you know, that sort of thing. And San Diego County gun owners, we've partnered with Firearms Policy Coalition, who has been wonderful. Firearms Policy Coalition has been so wonderful to us. I'm such a fan of what their work and what they've done, and the way they've treated us is just been wonderful. We've partnered with them to do some lawsuits. We're plaintiffs in some lawsuits, which we're very, very happy about. But really, there's so much culture to change, and the way we're changing the culture is, number one, with carry permits. You know, there were about 1,100 carry permits in San Diego County when we started, and now there's over 6,000, which is still not enough. And they're increasing by.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. What was the numbers again?
Started 7 years ago, there was about 1,100, and now there's over 6,000, 62, 6,300, something like that.
Right on.
And it's increasing by about 200 a month, give or take. So that's great. But what that's doing, and of course we're introducing gun ownership to people, and you know, we're getting people elected, you know, based on their views on the Second Amendment. What those three things are doing: getting permits, turning people into gun owners, getting people elected based on their Second Amendment views. That's actually changing the culture. So the gun laws have been so bad in California that, you know, San Diego, there's an entire generation, maybe even a generation and a half of people who have no experience with firearms at all, let alone carrying one for defense. So that's kind of the short, medium, and long-term plan is to help change that culture. I think along the way, you know, there's not like a point like, well, how many people have to be gun owners in California before, you know, everything's solved. Along the way, the more and more people, the more and more we change the culture, the better and better things get, just as a result of that. I mean, you know, there's some things that we definitely attack directly, whether it's in the courtroom or through politicians or just putting political pressure on politicians, that sort of thing. But that culture is really what we're focused on changing. I've met, you know, we were going, especially at the beginning, I'd go around and say, hey, you know, if you're a voter, you need to worry about the Second Amendment. Here's our voter guide and whatever. And I'm talking to voters who have never touched a gun before, and they're 40, 50 years old. So I realized that, hey, we have to get them to a point where they actually have experience with what I'm talking about before that we can get them to care about what I'm talking about. So I can't really say that, hey, at this point, in the future, we're going to change this specifically. The whole point is to just try to get to a tipping point by getting enough people to agree with us, enough people carrying, owning, and voting based on the Second Amendment.
So I stepped away to get a drink here. So along those lines, is there some kind of projected, or is there any way to know? Because I know population changes, but is there some tipping point where we have enough votes, or like you have enough gun owners on board to be influential to enough that politicians are listening to you like they used to listen to the NRA on the national scale?
I don't know. It's tough to say, and I work on such a micro level. Like the city of Santee, we're already there. The city of Santee has city council members that are always going to agree on the Second Amendment, that sort of thing. The city of Del Mar, we're nowhere near that. The city of Del Mar they're all anti-gun owners. So I guess I haven't really I haven't really quantified that or come up with a timeline for that. I think we're probably too early in the process. I just, we're still swinging and we've gotten a foothold and we've done a lot of really good things. But there's just so much more to do, and it's going to continue for decades.
So I guess I appreciate that answer again, because I'm just throwing these out there as we are chatting here, and I didn't prepare anything. I've just been kind of reacting to some of your answers and then what people are asking out there. When you mentioned when you said partner with FPC, Firearms Policy Coalition, they're California based, or are they someplace else now?
I'm not sure. I know they started in California, but they've definitely gone national and even talked about going international.
And I'm not totally sure their whole origin story and stuff, but at this point, I think to summarize them, I'd say they're a bunch of lawyers that look at things through the lawyer microscope or whatever, and then address things. If the hammer and the nail analogy, they're lawyers and they're looking for lawsuits for the most part. But they're also kind of masters of the social and change in awareness. And I don't know what to call, if you look at I'm trying to use a bunch of visuals here, but if you put all gun owners on a whiteboard and start putting circles around, hunters and FUDs and this and that, like FPC seems to do a really good job of crossing realms or getting the message out to lots of different types of gun owners compared to some of the other organizations, which are a little bit more focused or a little more, laser focused. I think at least they might be laser focused, but FPC has a lot of branches. Anyway, so I guess what I'm asking is, FPC being an interesting organization, why is it that you worked with them? Is that a scale thing, or is it because of the nonprofit thing where you can't do lobbying because of and I don't know how it all works, but I know that some nonprofits can only do certain realms. So I guess that was the question. When you partnered with them, what was sort of the origin story or the result?
When we started, they reached out to us and basically said, "Hey, look, we're here for you." And I got to tell you, they were just about the only organization that did that. In fact, some of the other organizations were downright adversarial, which I just disregarded. I don't care. We just have to prove ourselves, and we did. But they just continued on with the conversation and, hey, how can we help? And we'd say, hey, how can we help? We're both playing our position on the field. Like you said, Firearms Policy Coalition, basically they come up with a lawsuit, they find the funding, they find the attorney, and they find the plaintiff, and they put them all together. That's different from what we do. And we both agree, I don't want to do what they do, and they don't want to do what we do. So let's just support our each other, and wherever there are overlapping circles, even better. So they came to us and said, hey, we really want to go after this assault weapons ban, and will you be a plaintiff, and can you find more plaintiffs? And you know, they used our attorney and their attorney together, and it's gone really, really well. So we get along really, really well because there's no competition. There's no, we put our pride aside, and we just both are focused on doing what we're both good at. So there's no conflict. It's total. It's actually really great. We had at our dinner this year, we actually had a section of our dinner where we thanked them and had Adam Kraut come up and talk about Firearms Policy Coalition, and it's been great. It's been really, really wonderful. So we never wanted to. I really was almost avoiding lawsuits because I really truly just felt like it was making activists lazy to just rely on lawsuits. And I still say that, you know, if knowing about a lawsuit is not activism, you know, learning, you know, reading every memo and everything that, you know, that comes along about a lawsuit, that's not activism. Lawsuits in general, I mean, if you're an activist, unless you're the plaintiff or the attorney or the donor, you know, funding the lawsuit, that's not activism. There's no room for activism. So, you know, write them a check, you know, every
like
year.
The slowest observation ever. It's like the slowest sport ever.
Yeah, exactly. But write them a check, you know, and then, you know, go do real effective activism. But reading about a lawsuit's not effective activism. It's not activism at all. So anyway, we do really, really well together. We're happy with everything they've done for us. And I really just cannot say enough good about Firearms Policy Coalition and what they've done for us.
Right on. So again, I appreciate the time. Since you said I could take some time, I'm going to ask you, I've got 3 questions. I'm going to ask you. There's still 2A. Then we're going to talk Red Dawn. So we'll talk Red Dawn as long as we want to talk Red Dawn. I got one more question, or at least not a question so much as an opportunity to bring something else up that I dig, because another reason I wanted to chat with you, when you were chatting with Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I think he said something like, bring something up or mention something, and out of nowhere, you could have picked anything else in the world, and you brought up OG Pumpkin and Thrash and Raid.
Yeah.
So let's, since we're chatting and since we're both fans, want to take a second and let's just acknowledge both what they got going on.
Sure. Well, so he asked me who my favorite interview was on Gun Owners Radio.
Okay.
And those guys by far. Okay, so Gun Owners Radio, you know, it's a 2-hour radio show, gunownersradio.com. Absolutely love it. I never thought I'd be on a radio show, but man, it's the best thing in the whole world. But it's super focused, right? I mean, it's about guns. So there's only so many times you can talk about, you know, the difference between a 9mm and 45, or, you know, which is better, an AK or an AR. So I really like to talk about people and, you know, hey, what makes this person tick and why are they even interested in this? And those 2 guys had the most interesting story. One of them was, you know, kind of a slacker, and more than a slacker. He was an alcoholic and a druggie in high school, and he was failing miserably at life, frankly. And a Marine recruiter put his arm around him and said, look, you know, come here after school and we're going to turn your life around. And he did. This guy ended up going and he was MARSOC, and it was just an outstanding story. The other guy, he was a violent gang member in the Anaheim area in Southern California, and decided to turn his life around and went into the Army and became a Ranger. Anyway, what I liked about, I don't know how much we even talked about guns, to be honest with you. I don't remember talking about guns with these guys at all. They're both instructors. They're both outstanding guys. They're big Second Amendment guys. But their story was just amazing. I couldn't believe that existed. I felt so sheltered in my life to find out that these guys did such you know, their life was that torn before the age of 18, and they turned it around, and they did it in the military. And I just thought that was amazing. So I don't know how much it had to do with the Second Amendment, but it just touched my heart.
Right on. Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the second, mainly, well, I mean, because I'm a military course, but they, everything you just said there is a great summary. Now, as they're both out and They're mentors for the young who are living the same lives potentially, or the same pathways as they were. So they're helping the youth of their areas that they came from with their organizations as capitalists, and they're sharing that. Both of them are being really interesting how they share that. It's really interesting the way the new generation shares all this stuff. But then they're also helping veterans on their way out, transitioning out as, from whatever they were, either in that area specifically. Sometimes in the events that they have the guys fly in. So depending on if it's a unit type of centric thing or if it's a location centric thing, they're offering opportunities for both the youth and the veterans coming out. And what they do, well, like you said, they're instructors and stuff also, but what they do to kind of relieve stress and get everybody together and do the social thing like you're talking. And what I really think is cool is this evolution of, okay, so they started out just going out shooting, all right? And then it turned into taking an old vehicle because they had enough money laying around to take an old vehicle and shoot in and out of the vehicle. Then it turned into, let's bring everybody out, the vehicle, a taco truck, mariachis, shoot, have a big party afterwards. And that's helping the veterans just to have something to look forward to as they're transitioning out, different kinds of situations with PTS, injuries. It's freaking awesome. So 2A is involved. It's celebrating 2A, and it's also therapeutic version of 2A, which is one of the things that's way underplayed, way underemphasized, and underappreciated in our community. So yeah, I think OG Pumpkin and Thrash and Raids projects are freaking awesome. So I appreciate again, you could have talked about anybody there, and the easy bet would have talked about, anybody in the community, fill in the blank, somebody in the community, everybody would have been happy. But again, thanks for bringing in somebody. I guess you're bringing in the Southern California part of it, but again, so what? Okay, so then my 3 questions, and then we talk about Red Dawn. I was going to ask you about using social. These are, I guess I'm just going to go through. I was going to ask you about using media as a tool, because that's one of the things you talked about on Charlie's show, but you already mentioned it. I was also going to chat with you about your position on the reliance on lawsuits, but you've addressed that a bunch of times. But those are both in my notes. I'm just making a mention of that to people that are out there. Maybe it's more than, it's 3 questions. So the first one is, what resources does a Second Amendment activist need in 2022? What resources / skills does a Second Amendment activist need in 2022?
As far as the skills, I would turn that around. And I've gotten fairly good at figuring out what skills a person has and then exploiting that for the purpose of the Second Amendment. So I guess what I'm saying by that is, do what you're good at, but do it in a way that advances the Second Amendment. So if you're somebody that's good at talking to people, then great, talk to people and figure out some kind of way that you can represent our message and get our message out. But if you're somebody who's not good at talking to people, okay, we'll figure out a way that that you can help in a way that you're not talking to people. Maybe you're good at maybe you're extremely organized and good at spreadsheets. Well, there's a lot of logistics that go into different events and efforts to get people to vote the right way and that sort of thing. So I don't think people need to go change themselves or have to go but figure out what you're good at and then figure out how you can use that towards towards advancing the Second Amendment. The most important thing though is just get involved. Find a group and get involved. Let them know, hey, I'm here and I need to do something. You have 2-3 months to get me involved in doing something. I can give you 3 hours a week or whatever, and let them know and get involved, and they'll find a way to get you involved. So a lot of times you don't have to go too far outside of your comfort zone to do things. But if you look at the first interview I ever did 7 years ago with local media, it was horrible. It was horrible. So learning how to talk to people, learning how to deliver a message, I think is always it's always a good idea. But if you can't do that and you're not interested in doing that, it doesn't mean there's not a place for you. But I do think that it's extremely important. We have a lot of people in the Second Amendment movement who are engineers. There's a lot of engineers. We don't have enough people who are sales folks, and I think we need a lot more sales people or people that bring sales skills, marketing skills, that sort of thing to the Second Amendment fight. I think that's extremely crucial, because sales is everything. When you're trying to sell a message, or you're trying to sell a membership, or you're trying to sell a concept, or sell a candidate, that sort of thing. So, either getting better at sales in general and talking to people and influencing them and convincing them to do something, or just finding people that are good at sales and getting them to direct their talents towards the Second Amendment is probably a really good idea. As far as resources, I think we're over-resourced. We have everything. People, they read bills and lawsuits and decisions, and they research this and research that, and they read this book and this conceptually and blah 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 blah. I think we're over-resourced. If anything, I think you should probably cut back on how much people, you in general, I don't mean you specifically, but people in general, activists in general, should probably cut back about 10% on how much they look at resources. I think we way too much of our heads are full of information. We probably need to, click out of the information and, close the book and close the magazine and roll up our sleeves a little bit more. So I think there's plenty of resources out there. Every bit of human knowledge is at our fingertips. I think, but I think we're all too smart. We're all over informed and under actioned. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but
sorry, I leave it muted. I don't mean to leave it hanging. I muted out of reflex because I usually have a bunch of fans going. So just I couldn't finish on my notes. I think it's sort of, or it sounds like you're talking about the same sort of issue we have with trying to buy experience or trying to buy skill with scopes and grip angles and red dots, right? we try to buy our way through going to practice. So it's like, well, if I can, throw $30 at this place, if we can get another lawyer on board, or I'm just using examples, but that's sort of the same idea that we're looking for. If we stock up and have enough prepared, then we don't have to do anything. But in reality, we don't really need that much prepared. We just need to be out there doing stuff on a constant basis.
Yeah.
Right on. So then, well, maybe this Berkshire doesn't then after that answer, but do you have 2 books that you can recommend?
Yes.
The focus of activists.
Yeah. The first one is, so there's a few different books.
Yeah, you don't have to limit it to 2 if you've got more than that. But.
Well, I think everybody should look at Jonathan Haidt's work on the 6 moral foundations theory. It's HAIDT. If you just
I found that. Which was it? I found his page on Amazon, but which particular? Do you remember the particular book?
Oh, it's I can't remember. I apologize. I don't remember the name of it. It's the one that talks about it's the one that talks about the 6 moral foundations.
I'll do it.
6 moral foundations theory. But all his work has been really fascinating, particularly that. I think that everyone should read a biography on Gandhi and on Martin Luther King. I think that both of what they did is extremely important to learn about and how they did it. And then Rules for Radicals. A lot of people are, especially on the right side of the political spectrum, are very they don't like it. They're very skeptical of it. They're very critical of Rules for Radicals, and very few of them have actually read it. I would highly recommend, if you're going to be an activist, read Rules for Radicals, and then apply it to the Second Amendment, because it really is kind of a step-by-step. Here's how you organize and empower people to get something done when it comes to public policy. There's a couple things in there I don't really agree with. There's a couple things in there that are maybe a little more aggressive than I like, but 80% of that book is extremely important and effective. So that's that. So Jonathan Haidt, anything about Martin Luther King's life, anything about Gandhi's life, and then Rules for Radicals. That's what I'd recommend. Right
on. Well, I feel good because I've read, except for that John Haidt, who I'd never heard about, I've read the others. So Rules for Radicals is interesting. I'd never thought of it. So I read it as more of like an awareness of the tactics of the opponent. Not so much that I was looking at, but I also was looking at it as looking at the opponent's game plan or whatever playbook. So I didn't think of it as so much like that. I was almost reading it with my holding my nose, as you can imagine, like you just kind of described there. I just wanted to see what it was all about, and I forgot it was years ago. So to me, it was surprising how similar it was to the Obama situation, like the whole campaign and sort of the so many things like were used by the Obama campaign, I guess, or something. So I must have read it a while ago when I had that in my focus still. But
and Obama won twice.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like it worked. I mean, it's almost like they, from what I remember, and there was a couple of us reading it kind of together, and I remember us going, this seems very similar to what actually happened, or like they literally used a lot of these things. And I remember, I think one of the reasons we read it is because people had mentioned that so many of these things are right out of this book. I was going to say with the biographies, I know that sometimes biographies can be weird or crazy. Are there any that just a general biography? I guess it's not like there's any specific type of biography. Both of these guys are so famous that there's probably multiple biographies.
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, if you just want to be lazy, just go watch the movies. Okay. Watch the movie Selma about Martin Luther King, and then watch the movie with Ben Kingsley about Gandhi. What they were able to accomplish. I'm not, neither were perfect men. There's certainly some criticism. We're all flawed, but what they were able to do in the arenas that they're famous for was amazing. So the Rules for Radicals, I'll tell you real quick. Years ago, before San Diego County Gun Owners, I was asked to put together a seminar teaching people basically how to become a Second Amendment activist. And I did a bunch of research, called a bunch of people, and put together this format, kind of this, outline of what we were going to talk about, and had some guest speakers and that sort of thing. And at the last minute, someone suggested Rules for Radicals, and I hadn't really read it in, I don't know, a couple decades or whatever, and went back and read through it and realized that, 3/4 of what I'd come up with for my seminar was spelled out in Rules for Radicals. And I realized, like you said, it was kind of awareness for the enemy's playbook. But I looked at it through and thought, gosh, these are really good ideas. So that's kind of how I tripped across that. But
well, and it's not like that. Was that Saul Alinsky? Is that guy?
Yeah, Saul Alinsky. Yeah.
It's not like that guy came up with these. He just put a whole bunch of strategies that have been around for as long as probably Art of War or something, right? But he just wrote them on a book together and said, do things with this intent instead of trying to be polite or civilized. He's like, all tactics go, or all tactics apply, or something, right?
Yeah, and the other one, by the way, the Confrontational Politics by H.L. Richardson. Confrontational Politics by H.L. Richardson. H.L. Richardson,
the guy that started Gun Owners of California.
That's right. Gun Owners of California, Gun Owners of America. He wrote a book called Confrontational Politics.
Do you know him?
No, I know his family. Gun Owners of California was very helpful at the beginning with San Diego. Well, right before we became San Diego County Gun Owners, we did some fundraising and some work with Gun Owners of California. But I don't think I ever met him personally. But that book is excellent.
Okay, Confrontational Politics, and so people, I don't want to assume anything here. People, this is state senator from California, and from what I understand, if I understand the history right, a bunch of people decided, you know what, let's get rid of guns in California by going after handguns, by going after the manufacturers, and that didn't work, so they were going to call it a health thing. they were going after all these different strategies. They went to the assault weapons ban. This H.L. Richardson said, nope, and figured out ways to address that by creating Gun Owners of California. This is my summary. And then that was successful. They started playing around with California stuff at the national level. And then Gun Owners of America created using the same blueprint to prevent same kind of stuff at the national level. And it grew from there.
Yeah, this was back in the 70s. So, this predates like NRA, ILA. He really was a pioneer. I mean, NRA was around and they were doing, good things, but they were still really focused on being a training organization. And, H.L. Richardson was really getting into the political side. Great guy from all accounts, great work that he did, but GOA and GOC were, thanks to him. And he's written a few books, but confrontational politics is definitely one that I like a lot. Sam Paredes, who runs Gun Owners California, I hope I get this right. Sam is his son-in-law, and he turned me onto that book. And he's just a wealth of knowledge and an extremely successful Second Amendment guy as well.
Him?
I do know Sam. He's a great guy, wonderful role model. He's somebody I truly try to emulate.
He lives by your capital, way up north from you.
Lives up, close to Sacramento.
I just know I've been trying to do charts of everybody, the players. So cool to be able to talk to people who know some of the players in California. So I appreciate that. Another book. So my last question, then we talk Red Dawn. This is the last question I ask everybody, and everybody answers it in a different way. You've got a completely different awareness of the players, and you got your own ideas for strategy. So my question is, you're given, they go to the Gun Rights Policy Conference in a couple of weeks here, where all the gun owners' rights organizations get together and talk strategy, and they go into backroom sessions and whatever, and they figure out, Michael's been doing the most work. We're going to make him the 5-star general at 2A, right? And you're going to have all the resources, all the skill sets of all the different organizations. Everybody's willing to take marching orders with whatever strategy you come up with. I'm going to change it to you're the JED of 2A so that we keep the Red Dawn thing on. But, so you're given command of everything that's on the table right now, all the organizations, players, and resources we've got. What do you do for 5 years and 10 years? Where do you take it?
Oh, man. Well, I got to tell you, let me say a few things. First off, I am not arrogant enough to pretend I know better than a lot, all these folks that are running these organizations. I think that what they're doing and how they're doing it is fantastic. So let me just start there. First off, I mean, truly, I think that from my vantage point, we need more organizations like, they're modeled after San Diego County gun owners in more battleground municipalities, like Phoenix and Las Vegas and, some of the battleground cities, where we're fighting city council by city council. So however we can fund those, and get those going. I mean, we have the model. So I think that the model works, and I think it would not be duplicative to have these in more cities. It would just be complementary. It would absolutely help the efforts of people that are working on the state and federal level. So concentrating on that is probably the only thing I have to add. And that's what I'm literally trying to add. And attempting to do more of. I think anybody that's doing anything good for the Second Amendment I'm thankful for, and I'm truly respect everything they're doing. I think that we make, there's a lot of little mistakes that we make. Like, I talked about earlier that in ignoring media was a huge problem. That was a mistake. So we make a lot of little mistakes, but in general, I think we're doing really, really well. I think that we need to figure out how to get more people involved with either their dime or their time, because we just don't have. I think the percentage of gun owners who are, actively funding or volunteering for groups is really low. I think the percentage is really low. So I don't think it's anything bad that's happening, or anything that could be improved upon. I think it needs to start with just getting more people involved. When I do talk to organization leaders, I wish that they're such talented people and they know where they're going and they know how to get there. And the amount of time that they spend on just trying to keep the lights on is detrimental to the cause in general. If everybody out there, if all the activists out there could just increase the amount of people who are just writing checks to these organizations by 10%, that would be exponentially more effective. And then the next step is just getting them to show up and roll up their sleeves and do some things. Man, we could take over the world. You asked a little bit about earlier about what's the tipping point? How many people have to be involved, or how many gun owners have to be created in California for things to start to get better? I don't know that number. I still don't. I think it's a great question. It's a complicated question. But one of the most important things to know is not everyone has to agree with us. We don't have to get 100% of the population to agree with us in order to be effective. We just have to get 50% plus one, to show up on election day. That's all we got to do. We don't have to get 100% of the people who disagree with us to agree with us. We just have to get more people who agree with us to actually show up. And I think that that's an encouraging thing to know. It's such a daunting task what we're all trying to do. So I think just little tiny things. I think that the plan's in place. I think that the people in place are doing great things. No one's perfect. People have their strengths and weaknesses. I think that we just need more folks involved. We need to increase the amount of people who care about the Second Amendment as much as you and I do. And, again, give their dime and time to something they care about so much. But the people running FPC and GOC and GOA and all these other organizations, I think they're doing a great job, and the plan's in place. And the more time we can give them to work on the plan, and the less time that they have to worry about, like I said, keeping the lights on, the better. So I don't know. Maybe that's not as quite as thorough or specific an answer but it really truly is sincerely what I believe.
Right on. That's a more elaborate answer than anybody else, I think. So I appreciate it. Well, maybe not, but it's a pretty awesome answer. So I appreciate that. Let's see. I'm going to make sure I think we did miss a couple of questions out here. So Gunpowder Beauty had asked earlier, she might not be awake anymore. She's a young lady. In the past few years, what has Michael seen that needs to in the past years, what has Michael seen needs to strengthen in citizens in the gun community?
Oh, I think involvement. I think we should be unapologetic, about being gun owners and caring about the Second Amendment, but still humble. So unapologetic, but humble. And I think that sometimes we're, too apologetic, or worse, we're too arrogant. We're too in your face and aggressive. I don't ever apologize for supporting the Second Amendment or being a gun owner or wanting more people to be gun owners. But I do it in such a way that, that people would, would support and like and relate to me, hopefully. So I think that would help a lot. So their involvement and just getting involved, like, stop complaining, stop, get off the internet, stop building your 17th AR, get involved in these organizations and be unapologetic but humble.
Right on. This is a good way to say it. I mean, I don't want to say don't get your 17th AR or whatever, but the same way that you shuffle in a safe at some point, at some point a gun owner is going to get their first gun. And it's so weird for me. Well, I guess I don't remember from your interviews. Have you been a gun owner your whole life, or you got into it as an adult?
Well, I was into it, of course, I was interested as a kid. But I turned 21 and raised enough money, saved enough money to buy a Glock 19, a Mossberg 500, and an AR.
Okay, I remember your story now. So you've been around guns for a while now, but again, a lot of people have just gotten into guns recently. And so, making a choice as a 30-plus-year-old adult to purchase firearms is just a totally different world or whatever. So, lost where I was going with that. Talking and typing at the same time. But as far as, I have no idea where I was going with that. So that one went off into a tangent. Gunpowder Beauty also had asked, where is Gun Prom and when? So it's an opportunity to chat about Gun Prom again. I know there's more than one. You have one for each of the county organizations? We
do. So if you go to gunprom.com, it's got all the Gun Prom information. San Diego has the biggest one. Ours last year is about 750. The year prior is about 1,000 people. That's in San Diego. And next year it's September 16th, I think, I hope. But then Inland Empire is about to have their first in November. And that's going to be in Riverside County. It's actually on an Air Force base at a museum, an air museum. Orange County had theirs back in March at the Orange Hill Restaurant. That was an awesome venue for that. So go to gunprom.com and you get to take your pick. We have one more this year, and then we're going to have 3 next year. And they're a lot of fun. We last year for San Diego, this year I should say, gave away it was 37 guns and a flamethrower. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool. People come in. I really wanted it to be, an important political event, but I also wanted it to be fun, but I didn't want it to be a carnival atmosphere. And I think we continue to strike the right chord there. Everybody has fun. I get a lot of feedback from people. I get a lot of feedback from politicians or people that are involved in politics, and they say, I got to go to a lot of these rubber chicken dinner events, and this is the only one my wife likes to go to. She doesn't want to go to any other one. She wants to go to this one. So we tend to have a lot of fun. It tends to be, a really good time, and I'm very, very proud of that jewel in our crown, Gun Prom. But go to gunprom.com and you can check it out.
Is there a national, is there a state level? There's the Gun Owners of California. Is that considered the Gun Owners Group of California? I know that there's also Cal Guns and there's some others. So is there, Arizona has Arizona Citizens Defense League. We know that that's the annual meeting to go to for Second Amendment. Is there something in California that's the annual meeting that the whole state goes to? Or is Gun Prom not just a surrogate, but a version of that, or the only version of that?
Well, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but yeah, I guess it is. I guess it's kind of turning into that. Particularly the San Diego one is like I said, by far the biggest. I'm hoping to get about 1,000 people again this coming up next year.
And it was only because of a limitation on capacity, not a interest in the event, that it limited it to 1,000 in 2020, from what I understand, right?
Yeah, it was COVID is what happened. California had some goofy law that said
you probably got more, in other words, than if you could have gotten an event or a venue with more than 1,000. It's just there was a restriction, artificial restriction on it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, but I think we'll probably keep it in like the 800 to 1,000 range. If it gets much over 1,000, man, it gets really tough to handle. I mean, we're a political organization. We threw this big party and it's just grown every year. And that's great. It's fun. It's a great fundraiser. It's a lot of fun. But, at the end of the day, we're still a political organization. So I think we'll probably keep it around 800 to 1,000 people. But I don't know. We'll never say no if somebody wants to go and, but yeah.
Well, it's interesting because that's the whole element of just everything in general. Whenever you're going to do anything that succeeds and people start to attend it, you got to deal with scale and size and growth. And at some point, it's no longer the same thing anymore. Pretty soon, it's a concert and it's not a get together and it's not a social event anymore. So that makes sense.
It is. It's the weirdest thing. When I started doing all this, some of the decisions I've had to make, you just never think like, you have this vision of like, all right, well, I'm going to be on this, whatever. I'm going to be right in this politician's face and I'm going to say this and I'm going to do that. And the reality is, you got to decide what shade of blue should be in your logo, and that kind of stuff. Like, well, which brand of T-shirt do you guys want to use for your official T-shirt? And some of these decisions that are made, it's kind of hilarious. It's never anticipated, but gun prom, picking out, what dessert are you going to serve with your core, that kind of stuff. You just never think, but hey, if people are having fun and it gets them involved, we're in. It's definitely a showpiece. It's definitely something that we're proud of and that it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hope I hope you can either franchise it or people copy it. I don't know what kind of proprietary thing there is, but like I definitely think that's the kind of thing that there's. If someone was asking me about the 5th or being the 5-star general at 2A, definitely gun prom would be in there. There needs to be one because what you talk about experiencing at the gun prom is, I'm assuming, what I experience when I go to the AZCDL event. Because they do a little bit weirder here because we're in Arizona and it's a lot of old people and they enjoy open carry. So it's the kind of open carry barbecue gun type of thing. I don't know if you do that in California, but so there's a lot of 1911s and chromed revolvers and nobody's fiddling with them, but it's just that kind of an event where everybody's kind of dressed up, Arizona dressed up, which is just kind of normal. I don't know, probably anyway. So it's probably a little more casual than your prom, but the event is getting a bunch of like-minded people together for some time to just kind of relax and understand and kind of get a sit rep of what's been going on and just experience time together that isn't at a range or a gun show or some kind of a rally or something. So, it's not politically motivated. It's just to celebrate the year. And yeah, I totally understand. And again, I think that that's something that's missing when I talk about the rallies missing some stuff. It's what I think you've mentioned or you talked about being the social element of your projects, or creating times for those social elements of gun ownership in general and Second Amendment, right? I mean, Second Amendment specifically, gun ownership in general. Gun owners, like you say, just are cool people, and they end up just being down to earth. And even if they're super diverse, they're going to have some stuff in common that is core.
Yeah, well, and just bringing the community together, it's an important, in and of itself, is an important exercise.
I know we're getting late here, but last question from the audience was from Smeggy, who's up in San Francisco area most of the year. Have there been any gotcha interviews? He asked that earlier when we were talking about media.
I got to tell you, I think I go into every interview as if it's going to be a gotcha interview, which is why I prepare so hard. There was one. Trying to think of what it was. I can't remember the actual issue, but some new regulation had just passed and went down to the press conference. It was, the anti-gun politician had a press conference. We went down there and got in front of the media, said, hey, if you guys want to, counterpoint, here we are. And a news station that was actually usually really good to us, their reporter was clearly not a fan, and she edited her story. It wasn't horrible, but it was worse than I thought it should have been. And so I went to the station manager, who I knew and was a really good person, and had, we'd formed a relationship. and just kind of, said, hey, come on, this isn't fair, and so instead what they did is they said, well, we can't do anything now. We the video is the video, but rather than putting a couple of quotes in the digital, in the text, they actually printed our entire press release, which was extremely rare. They never do that. So it wasn't, I don't know, it was a little bit of a gotcha, but honestly, I go in so prepared, and again, so unapologetically humble that if there probably were gotcha interviews and they didn't get me. So, but honestly, I found,
are they usually like not used to that? So once you don't follow the way they expect you to, they're off guard, and you pretty much can just handle the rest of it because they're not ready for that. Like, or is it?
Well, I think if you go in with a certain mentality of just kind of being like, hey, geez, we're just really outstanding people, and look at what they're trying to do to us. It's harder to get that person, right?
Okay.
But honestly, in all seriousness,
in other words, the message itself is slippery. The message itself doesn't leave them any angles to attack.
I think, I think that's probably part of it. I think that if you go in with a, with an arrogance, and without that humbleness, I think that you're easier to get. But really, truly, what I've found is that they really just want friction, so I haven't really found a lot of it. And I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of journalists, and I haven't really found that they're necessarily trying to further their own personal narrative. But I have found that they're trying to, make sure that there's friction. So they want to, they interview both sides, and they tell you what the other side says, and they try to get something spicy. And, if you just stay on message and make sure not to get rattled, it's usually, I haven't had a lot of problems. I've had far more successes than things that I'm worried or embarrassed about.
Damn, I'm trying not to ask a bunch of questions, but I got two right now. So I appreciate the answer to that question, because that was gold right there. That could be conversations for a whole hour or more. Okay, so no, so I should have wrote them down. Would they work outside? Would your concept work outside of California? And has it been tested?
It would absolutely work outside of California. But what's required is, it wouldn't work in an area that's all anti-gun. I try to stay away from conservative, liberal, or Republican, Democrat, or, those kind of labels. I really, truly, so, blue or red, try to stay away from that. If we go into an area, I think if this group or this model, we're in an area that we're, 95% anti-gun, it really wouldn't work. If we went into an area that was 95% pro-gun, it really wouldn't work. There has to be kind of a mixture, a 40-60 or a 50-50 kind of mixture, so that you have, because it really is kind of a carrot and stick, you got to have enough people to be the stick, and you got to have, there has to be enough of a
person to get the word out and to be influential. Is that what you mean by enough people to be a stick?
Exactly. Yeah. You have to have, there has to be enough people that if you don't go along with us, those people will punish you at the polls, or punish you, as far as PR. So there has to be kind of two sides. If you did go Republican, Democrat, it'd have to be like a purple area, so I don't know if it would work in, most counties in Arizona, but it would definitely work in Maricopa County. Maricopa County is definitely, there needs to be a Maricopa County gun Clark County, where Las Vegas is. It would definitely work in Clark County. Would it work in Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia? Probably not. There's probably too many anti-gun folks in downtown Philadelphia, I think. So it would definitely work outside of California, but the key to success is that you need that mixture. You really need some strife there. You need enough people to fight, and you need enough people to fight against. Otherwise, it's just it'll fall flat.
Right on. Appreciate that. All right. So again, we've been chatting for 2 hours about 2A, but there's other important things in the world. One of them is you're on a road trip right now, and it doesn't matter where you are for situational security. We'll just mention you're in a state that's.
I'm in New Mexico.
Yeah, you're in New Mexico. So I don't know what kind of time you got. We've already mentioned that the places in Las Vegas, New Mexico, where most of Red Dawn was filmed. I'm never going to tell people where the filming locations are because, one, it should be earned, but I also just don't like making it that easy. It took a lot of effort. Smeggy out here that was in here helped me find a bunch of the places. We did a bunch of investigative stuff to figure it out through all kinds of means. So I don't want to get too far into that. But in that realm, before you get out of New Mexico, and again, I don't know what kind of time you got, but I'm assuming you've been to New Mexico, to Las Vegas, New Mexico. Have you been to the Big Red Rock where at the end, where the hinds are, and they're eating the grapefruits and they squirt?
Oh my God, that would be wonderful. I haven't been there, but when I was in Las Vegas. What's that?
It's nowhere near Las Vegas is the problem. I can tell you approximately, but I'll tell you it's 4 hours off your route. That's the same.
Oh well.
Okay.
I've been here. Here's what happened. I went to Las Vegas, New Mexico. I don't remember what this was, 10 years ago. And just driving around the town, I was like, oh my gosh, that's this and that's that. And here's where this was filmed.
So you knew when you were going there that you were going there to see the Red Dawn filming locations.
That's it. That's the only reason.
Okay.
So what happened was, I'll just tell you real quick. I lived in San Diego. My brother was moving to
I'll
Florida.
talk Red Dawn all night, so you don't have to go real quick. It's all up to you. But if you need to go quicker, because I understand we've been chatting, but otherwise I'll talk all night about Red Dawn. So
I was on a road trip with my brother who was moving to Florida from San Diego to Florida, and I said, okay, I'll go with you, but one stipulation. And we went to Las Vegas, New Mexico, which is 2-3 hours, whatever.
Not that bad off of 40. Yeah, that's not too bad.
So I drive into the city, and I'm like, I had no plan. I hadn't researched it or anything. I was just like, let's see how this goes.
Okay.
And I'm just like, oh my God, there's the mural, and oh my God, that's this and that's that. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe what I was seeing, what was going on. And then we drove a few hours out of Las Vegas, New Mexico, to towards Texas, and I was like, okay, this definitely looks like what you're describing. That end scene, But I didn't actually see the area.
Well, that area all looks like it. So yeah, I mean that's obviously where it was all filmed. But if you went from Las Vegas, New Mexico towards Texas, you definitely did not see the rock we're talking about, where the hinds and everything. That final chapter where Robert gets it, and Erica grabs the grenade. Okay, unfortunately, you're not driving through Arizona, but for future reference, in Cape Verde, Arizona, there's a place called Copper Star, and it's the longest indoor range in Arizona. Pretty cool range. It's right off of the 10 between Flagstaff between Phoenix and Flagstaff, right off the road, literally it's right at the exit. Copper Star, the RPK, the Valmet that they turned into an RPK, Lone Mountain Outfitters and all that, is at that range, and you can shoot the gun that was Patrick Swayze's gun. So that's the place called Copper Star in Camp Verde, Arizona. But you're not on that route. But so there's the rock from that scene, because that's where that RPK comes into play and everything. She gets left with it and all that. But so next time you're driving in that route, I'll tell you where that is. I don't tell anybody, because here's how we found it out. I drive around back whenever I can, kind of in debt from doing this, but I drive around looking at gun shows and gun shops and museums, right? So me and my friend from Canada were driving through that area, going up to The Las Vegas, again, I've probably been there like 5 times because I keep discovering new locations and I go back there to find them, stand on them essentially. I'll usually do this show live from one of the locations. So so we're driving through Santa Fe, which I'm not a big fan of, as I mentioned earlier, from the 2A rallies, because it's a little goofy town and they're not gun friendly. But we stopped in a gun shop there. They only have one gun shop at the time. And it turned out to be a gun shop where they filmed the show Longmire, that television show that was kind of cool at the time. So we were talking to the lady about how they filmed Longmire, and she goes, "What are you guys here for?" And I go, well, we're here to see the Red Dawn, or Red Dawn filming locations. And I didn't know if I wanted to bring it up because I thought I'd look like an idiot or whatever. And she goes, "Oh, and blah, blah, blah." So I got told by a lady who ran a gun shop and shooting range in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where that rock is, right? Sure. She told me where that rock is. So I told her, I'll never tell anybody where that rock is. I'll tell them you have to go to that gun shop and ask her. So that way her gun shop can visit, right? But I'll tell you because I don't think the gun shop exists anymore. But I won't tell anybody else in the world because it's so easy to find that it'll get ruined. So I don't tell anybody about that. But unfortunately, it's nowhere near where you're at. It's in a different direction and sucks. But in a future trip. So you're going north out of New Mexico from Las Vegas, and you're going to go to Ripon, and you got the NRA Whittingham Center, which is the biggest range we've got in the country. There's the NRA Museum there, which is some rich guy's collection. It's Brownell's, I think, collection. And then there's a library there. So it's worth stopping. You can get some memorabilia or whatever, and it's almost always open. You can drive around the range if you got time. It's 10 minutes off the highway. And then if you fart around on it, it's huge. So it'll probably take you half an hour just to fart around and look at a couple of the ranges, but you could say you've been there, and you'll almost always see antelope. The antelopes don't even care. They'll walk right up to your vehicle. It's kind of neat. Just hang out, say you've been there. It'll probably take you 40 minutes off of your trip. So altogether, getting there, hanging out. And if you got to get gas in Raton anyway, it might work out. If not, it's right there all the time. But too many people pass it.
Good suggestion. I like it.
So the next stop, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Dragon Man's. And you said you had not heard of Dragon Man's, and I said, okay, we're going live, and we're going to talk about this live. So I'm going to bring up my screen share here. I'm going to bring in Sharon. Screen Sharon's going to come in, and I'm going to bring up my screen here. This is the comments from everybody. Well, there's nobody showing up live anymore. We're kind of late. But I've got a place over here. Dragon Man's was started in 1982. He's got 3,000 firearms. This is a private collection.
Oh, I know this guy now. I know what you're talking about. Good. I don't think I knew that was the name. Okay.
So he's in Colorado Springs. From your route, it'll take you about half an hour, something-ish, to get to him. He's got the largest private museum. It's open to the public. If you're driving by on a Saturday or Sunday, the 17th, if that's anywhere near it, it probably isn't. But next weekend is his machine gun shoot, his 30th annual machine gun shoot. So you're actually going to be driving by, I'm assuming, somewhere in the middle of the week. You could literally drop by and hang out and meet Melissa, his daughter, who runs his gun shop. This is a picture of his gun shop. I'll make these way bigger. I'm doing this tiny little pictures. So he's got this classic picture. I'll link you on the Instagram. And he's got a bunch of just a cool shop. He's Dragon Man is because of his motorcycle. He does Harley Davidson motorcycle stuff. He's got a huge military vehicle collection. His museum is insane. So I've been to all the museums, and it's top notch. It's insane. Everything is alive. There's nothing a dummy in here. Everything is alive. Nothing is demilled. It's just it's something that's totally unique in the industry. Celebration of everything 2A. So he's about 40 minutes to, back and forth from the highway. So you figure maybe 2-3 hours if you spent an hour or something there just to experience it. So that's the big thing I was going to mention. Then you're going to head up to Denver, and I don't think of anything that I can think of that's all that awesome in Denver. A couple of gun shops are interesting. And then you're coming back through Utah and then Vegas.
Yes, down through
Park City area.
Yeah, through Zion. We're going to Zion.
Yeah, I don't know what Zion is. So, or no, is that further south than Salt Lake City?
Zion's South Utah. Yeah, way south. It's almost.
So you're going across. You're not even going all the way up to Denver. Then you're going across before you hit Denver.
Right.
Okay, then
Correct.
I'll tell you off air about a place that I might know that you might want to check out that does something that's just a manufacturer or whatever. But okay, I can't think of anything else. So except for the stuff in Vegas, which I'm sure you're familiar with, or probably familiar with as far as machine gun rentals and stuff. But I'll talk to you off air in a second about some of the stuff in Vegas in case I can help you with a hookup there. But awesome. Again, thank you for joining us. And
thanks for doing this, man. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
What I'll try to do, what I've been doing is having these interviews on Mondays with individuals. And then this first one, I try to let you just have a chat. But then usually I interrupt and have conversations with people. So what I do is the last Monday of the month is I bring everybody back. So I'm going to just start leaving the invite out to anybody. So think of the last weekend of the month. Anytime you want to chat 2A, you'll have an open invite. And, you know, just an eclectic group, I guess, of everybody who accepts an invitation to join in. So you've got an open invitation to that. But hopefully, again, we've got some other conversations that we'll have, and we'll keep you in the email list. So when you've got the opportunity to join in, you're always welcome. And if anything I can ever do, I've got, you know, some resources that have been around for a while. So if anything we can do to help you guys out in all your different projects, let us know. Well, I'm going to let you end the show with anything you want to plug, an elevator speech, or kind of wrap it up, and then I'll plug my ending here, and then we'll chat off here for here in a
bit. You know what? Just check out San Diego County Gunowners.com, check out GunOwnersRadio.com, and check out Gunprom.com.
Right on. I've got links to all of them in the list here. So thanks again, everybody. I know most people are probably not listening to this live anymore, but for listening in the future, do you guys have a Patreon?
No.
Okay. So the best way to support it is to get it to the website and buy a membership.
Yep. Make a donation. Become a member, make a donation. Absolutely. Don't
need to be a resident of California or Southern California to be a member to support the organization.
No. We have members from all over the place. So yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks again. I'll run it short here. I'll just throw this in here.
Tonight's episode, The Endangered Species.
Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals at gunwebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching gunwebsites.com. Do 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 do.